Imagine this. You're asleep in your own home. Suddenly, your front door gets blown off the hinges. A flashbang grenade goes off inside your living room. Armed agents storm in, throw you in handcuffs, and point rifles at your partner, all because the FBI hit the wrong address. And when you try to hold them accountable, the government argues that you can't sue because its agents had discretion to make mistakes. That exact nightmare reached the highest court in the land, and in a rare 9-0 ruling, the United States Supreme Court said no. Law enforcement can, in fact, be held accountable when they raid the wrong house. The case is called Martin versus United States. It started back in 2017, just outside Atlanta, Georgia. The FBI planned a pre-dawn raid targeting gang members. Special Agent Lawrence Guerrera was in charge. But instead of double-checking the official address, he relied on his personal phone GPS. That mistake routed the entire team to the wrong home. The house they stormed belonged to Katrina Martin, her partner, and her 7-year-old son. Before sunrise, agents kicked in their door and tossed flashbangs inside. The partner, terrified, hid in a closet until agents dragged him out in cuffs. They pulled Katrina out half-dressed and at gunpoint. Even the child was seized before anyone realized the truth. During the search, an agent noticed mail sitting on Aleixor Bosols. The address didn't match the warrant. Only then did the team realize they had just torn apart the wrong family's home. That family didn't let it slide. They sued the federal government under the Federal Tort Claims Act. Now, here's the legal backdrop. Normally, the government hides behind sovereign immunity. You can't sue them unless they allow it. The FTCA is one of the rare laws that does let citizens sue for wrongful acts by federal employees, but the FTCA has exceptions. 2 were in play here. First, the intentional tort exception. It normally blocks lawsuits for things like assault, battery, false arrest, or malicious prosecution. But right after listing those, Congress added the law enforcement proviso. That proviso makes it clear. If a federal law enforcement officer commits one of those acts, you can sue. Second, the discretionary function exception. That one shields the government when the act came from judgment calls, policy choices, or official discretion. The government argued this exception should cover the raid. But the Supreme Court didn't buy it. In a unanimous ruling, they made it clear when federal agents storm the wrong house, citizens have the right to take them to court. And here's why every gun owner should care. This case isn't directly about the Second Amendment, but it's about accountability. It's about wrongful raids, reckless government actions, and whether ordinary Americans have recourse when the government oversteps. That matters to anyone who values their home, their family, and their rights. So, what do you think? Should the government be shielded when raids go sideways? Or do you agree with the court's ruling? The Martin family tried to take the FBI to court under the Federal Tort Claims Act, but the government pushed back. Their argument? The discretionary function exception. They said that because the lead agent used his personal GPS, that decision fell under discretion. And therefore, the agents were still immune from being sued. The case was first filed in a federal district court in Georgia. The government asked for dismissal, and the district court sided with them. The family appealed, but the 11th Circuit also ruled in favor of the government. The appeals court said the agent had the discretion to prepare for the raid however he wanted. That was enough, in their eyes, to trigger the discretionary function exception, which meant the lawsuit could be tossed. From there, the case climbed all the way to the United States Supreme Court. And that's where things shifted. The court granted review, and in a 9-0 unanimous ruling, the justices rejected the government's position and sided with the family. Justice Neil Gorsuch wrote the opinion. The court vacated the 11th Circuit's decision and sent the case back down. Here's what the ruling said. First, the law enforcement proviso only modifies the intentional tort exception. It doesn't erase every other carve-out in the Federal Tort Claims Act. The 11th Circuit had stretched that reasoning too far. Second, the court rejected the idea that federal officers automatically have immunity just because their actions can be tied, even loosely, to federal policy. That's not how the statute works. Under the FTCA, liability isn't measured by government status. It's measured by state law. The federal government can be held liable if, in a similar situation, a private person would be liable under that state's law. That's the key. Courts can't just rubber stamp immunity by saying, well, this relates to federal policy. They must ask, what would state law require if a private individual made the same mistake? On that basis, the Supreme Court ruled against the FBI. Now, they didn't decide whether the discretionary function exception blocks this case in the end. They kicked it back to the 11th Circuit to figure that out. Specifically, whether using a personal GPS and busting into the wrong home is the type of act that can proceed as a lawsuit. So why should gun owners care? Because wrong door raids, mistaken arrests, and excessive force aren't rare. And when the folks inside the home are law-abiding gun owners, the outcome can turn tragic fast. Think about it. A homeowner woken up at dawn by people smashing in the door naturally arms himself in defense. Law enforcement, thinking they're at the right house, treats that homeowner as a threat. That's a recipe for disaster one that has cost innocent lives. If the government could wave it off every time under discretion, there would be no accountability. This ruling says they don't get blanket immunity. It opens the door for families to bring claims when federal agents cross the line. The Martin case narrows the government's ability to duck responsibility. It reinforces that federal officers can be held liable when they recklessly invade a home or misuse their power. This was another 9-0 unanimous decision, and it underscores just how dangerous government mistakes can be. Thankfully, no one was killed in this raid, but we all know plenty of cases where the outcome wasn't so lucky. The case now heads back down to the 11th Circuit. We'll see how it plays out, and I'll keep you updated as more details come out. So, what's your take? Should federal officers get immunity for these kinds of screw-ups? Or should families have the right to sue when their lives are turned upside down? Let me know down in the comments. And if you found this breakdown useful, make sure you like, subscribe, and stay tuned for the next update.